You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, this one really caught my attention in a way that most news rarely does. Trump's lawyers have requested a meeting with Attorney General Merrick Garland. What does this mean?
First of all, these defense attorneys know full well that you don't make a request to the attorney general when he's not the one conducting the investigation. This investigation is being conducted independently by special counsel Jack Smith. So if they were going to request a meeting with anyone, they should have requested it with Jack Smith. This really, to me, feels more like a public relations letter than it does legitimate lawyering.
Now, in general, how unorthodox or how normal is it for the team of the target investigation to request a meeting with the prosecutor's office overseeing that investigation?
So it's not all that unusual. In large white collar cases, for example, in large conspiracy cases, once the prosecutors are pretty much at the end game of the grand jury investigation and they are preparing to ask the grand jury to vote out indictments, it is not at all unusual for the defense team representing the target of the criminal investigation to either request a meeting with the United States attorney overseeing the investigation, or for the United States attorney to actually invite the defense team in and give the defense team an opportunity to make a presentation, for example, to provide any exculpatory evidence, any evidence that may make it look like the target of the investigation is actually innocent of the charges. Every once in a while, defense attorneys will take a U.S. attorney up on that invitation. Let me tell you, by way of a footnote, in death penalty cases, for example, which I handled when I was with the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Manual, that is the Bible of our prosecutorial practice, requires the U.S. attorney to meet with the defense team before the prosecutors go in and ask a grand jury to vote out possible capital charges, that is, charges that carry the possibility of the death penalty. So it's not all that unusual for one of the last steps before an indictment is returned by a grand jury to be the defense team meeting with the U.S. attorney, trying to basically talk the U.S. attorney out of indicting. And let me tell you, Brian, rarely is that successful.
Well, to that point, if they were looking to be successful, they likely wouldn't have taken the tone that they struck in that letter. So I want to read an excerpt from the letter. This is just a small piece of it. No president of the United States has ever in the history of our country been baselessly investigated in such an outrageous and unlawful fashion, and they requested a meeting with Garland at your earliest convenience to discuss the ongoing injustice that is being perpetrated by your special counsel and his prosecutors. So this doesn't sound conciliatory at all. Is this just public posturing, or are these guys actually going to try to intimidate Merrick Garland into bending to their will?
Yeah, this is not just bad lawyering. It is actually public relations. It's not lawyering at all. You don't take a tone like that if you're seeking a legitimate meeting with the decision maker. We've already talked about how Merrick Garland really isn't the decision maker. At this stage of the investigation, it's Jack Smith. You don't take a tone like that. And you were generous, Brian, because when you were reading an excerpt from the letter, you didn't even mention the fact that they included a shot at Hunter Biden. It's a wonder they could restrain themselves and not mention Hillary Clinton's emails
Right.
as well. This is Bush League. This is third-rate lawyering. This is Mickey Mouse stuff. This is really just so Donald Trump has yet another opportunity to fundraise, or more accurately, grift off his base.
Perfectly put. Glenn, what is the best that Trump's lawyers could hope for in this meeting? Like, in Trump's ideal world, what comes out of all of this?
So I think the best they can hope for is an audience with the decision maker. As we've discussed, the decision maker at this point is Jack Smith. But here's the thing. They may actually get a shot at an audience with Merrick Garland, because the way the special counsel regulations are written, Jack Smith is conducting this independent investigation. He will make a recommendation to the attorney general regarding whether to indict somebody, and if so, for what charges, how many people to indict, for example, in a conspiracy. And then Merrick Garland will have an opportunity to basically approve or decline to approve the recommendations made by Jack Smith. Now, if there's ever going to be a moment to have a legitimate meeting with the Attorney General, it will be when he is considering the recommendations from Jack Smith. And it may very well be before Merrick Garland is prepared to approve a recommendation from a special counsel and indict a president for the first time in U.S. history, he may very well meet with the defense team for Donald Trump just to give them one last opportunity to make a pitch, provide any exculpatory information, provide any arguments as to why Donald Trump shouldn't be indicted. So if there's going to be a meeting, that is when the moment will be ripe for Donald Trump's defense attorneys to meet with Merrick Garland.
On the flip side of that, what's the worst that could come out of this meeting? Is it possible that this meeting could actually backfire on Trump and his team?
Anytime Trump or his third-rate lawyers are running their mouths, there is a chance it will backfire.
Right, that's fair.
They are nothing if not tactical blunder all day long. So it could very well be that when they are offering these half-baked arguments, whether they're factual arguments or legal arguments, they could end up doing more harm than good to their cause and to the cause of their client. How often have we seen his lawyers go on TV only to implode? How many times have we seen Donald Trump himself, making statements that are undeniably incriminating and that will see the inside of a courtroom and be introduced as evidence against him at the end of the day?
Glenn, you've alluded to this a few times, but at the end of the day, why would Trump's team request a meeting with Merrick Garland, since ultimately all he's looking to do is either accept or reject a recommendation from Jack Smith?
So, this has the feel of a lack of client control. Both of these defense attorneys who signed their names to the letter were prior prosecutors, albeit, perhaps fleetingly. And they know better. They know that, one, this was the wrong person to request a meeting with, and two, they know it is not likely to sort of win their client any points. So this, to me, really feels like a lack of client control. When they're writing a letter saying he's being treated very unfairly, more unfairly than anybody else, and what about Hunter Biden? Look over there.
Right. It all sounds like it came right out of Trump's mouth anyway.
That's not lawyering. If it is, it's bad lawyering, and it's a lack of client control. The client gets to make lots of decisions in their own case, like whether to plead guilty or not guilty, like whether to testify, like, whether to demand a jury trial. Those are rights that are fundamental to a defendant. They can't be made by the defense attorney, but the day-to-day tactical calls absolutely can and should be made by the defense attorneys. And right now, this defense team is not doing their client any favors.
Glenn, do you have any worries that since Merrick Garland is so unaggressive, we'll say, I think that's a generous way of putting it, that he would strike some deal with Trump and his team?
I don't worry about him striking a deal. Now, the man seems circumspect to a fault. Nobody can accuse him of being, among the most aggressive attorneys general we've ever had. I actually believe that he's such a government man. He's such a by-the-book lawyer that he has entrusted special counsel Jack Smith to investigate these cases and to make the weighty decision with respect to whether Donald Trump should be indicted in one or both cases, the classified documents case and the insurrection. I happen to believe once Jack Smith makes those recommendations to Merrick Garland, he will absolutely accept them because, this is the person he entrusted to make this decision. So I think all of this is going to work out sort of, in justice's favor at the end of the day. I still maintain it is taking way too long, with the insurrection in particular, nearly 2.5 years in our rearview mirror, and Donald Trump continuing to undermine our democracy, to undermine the public's confidence in our elections. This is something that should have been taken care of 1.5 years ago.
Yeah. All right, let's finish off with this. Glenn, do you anticipate that both of these cases will be charged together, or would they be charged, the January 6th and the stolen classified documents case, or do you think that they'll just be charged whenever they're ready, respectively?
So, I like to find overarching conspiracies where I can, because if you can bring lots of charges together, appropriately join them together in one indictment, and present the whole criminal ball of wax to a jury, what do? You give the jury the power of context. Because let's face it, everything Donald Trump has done since, trying to steal the election in 2016, to trying to unlawfully retain the power of the presidency, it really has all had this sort of common thread or common theme. He wanted to acquire power by any means necessary, including unlawfully. He wanted to retain power by any means necessary, including unlawfully. And I maintain you could charge him with an enormous conspiracy from start to finish. However, I actually think that the theft of classified documents, the illegal retention of classified documents, and the obstruction of justice by refusing to return the classified documents after they have been subpoenaed by the grand jury is sufficiently separate and distinct from his quest to obtain or retain power that even I don't think I could bring them under one conspiratorial umbrella. So that's a long-winded explanation, Brian, by way of saying I think Jack Smith will indict the insurrection case and lots of charges that are relevant to Donald Trump's attempt to unlawfully retain power. But I think you will see a separate indictment for the classified documents case.
Okay. Well, obviously a lot to keep on top of for those watching. If you want to stay on top of legal news as soon as it breaks, make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.